It's been a few weeks since the State of the Union address, and Biden had a lot of touting to do. And there's a lot of like, last time you were on, we sort of do this check-in about Bidenomics. How's it going? And for specifically some of the things you mentioned that the FTC is doing behind the scenes, the things that aren't sexy or headline grabbing, but are helping consumers and privacy and whatnot. I wanted to go through how Biden's doing on stuff that isn't Gaza, because we need a few more reasons to defend this guy. And so a few things.
Or at least vote for him. Maybe not defend him, but
exactly. I voted for John Kerry. You think I fucking defended that guy? Never. But in terms of inflation, right? He's touting that inflation has dropped to 3%, lowest in the world, that the landing will be soft, meaning, and I think he means we're going to lower interest rates. Maybe we're going to stop squeezing middle-class people. Talk about this inflation stuff. Sure. Can he maintain this level?
I mean, what he means by soft landing, and what economists have meant by soft landing, is that we will get the disinflation, we will get the lower inflation without a concurrent loss of jobs. I mean, that's what the point is there.
But some are important.
And that's what we've seen, though. We continue to have these breakout jobs reports. The last one, I think, was 200 some odd thousand jobs created. That's about the monthly rate. And inflation keeps going down. And this is sort of at odds with what everybody thought. There are headlines you can find from Bloomberg and other business press that says 100% of economists predict a recession. It turns out we did not have that occur. And one of the reasons is that they were looking at inflation in a very particularized way. They were saying inflation is something that the central bank, the Federal Reserve, deals with, and they turn up interest rates. And the point of turning up interest rates is to lower demand in the economy, lower investment in the economy, kick people out of work, and get us to a demand level so that if demand drops, then the price drops. That was what their plan was. And that was kind of the thinking around this.
Right.
The reality is that we had a supply chain issue in 2021 and 2022.
That's totally fixed, right?
All ginned up. And when that simplified itself, and when we were able to get supply out, that created its own fix. And the other part of this is the sort of air that's left in inflation is about corporate profits. And it's very clear if you listen to any kind of corporate earnings call, they're giddy about the fact that they were able to raise their prices over the last couple years. And if you look at just any statistics, it shows that corporate profits as a percentage of the overall economy remain very elevated to where they were before the pandemic. And so there's room left to run there. And so what is the Biden administration doing about that? One of the things announced at the State of the Union was this thing he called a strike force. I don't know why we call these things that, have these like...
They sound cool, man.
These Justice League of America type
no capes
names, but it's basically an interagency working group. I'll say it the boring way. It's an interagency working group. That will look at prices in the economy and tell agencies that have laws that say you can't price gouge, you can't engage in deceptive practices, you can't do all of these things. Tell those agencies, hey, you have to fight back. We're seeing this in rental housing. We're seeing this in banking. We're seeing this in grocery prices. We're seeing this all over. One of the examples is that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, just before the State of the Union, announced that credit card late fees. So if you're 1 day late on your credit card payment, your minimum payment, they will hit a late fee on you. The average payment of that late fee was $32. And this is many multiples beyond what it actually costs the credit card companies to collect when there's a deficient payment. What the CFPB found is that actually costs the credit card industry maybe $8. And so you know what we're going to do? we're going to cap that late fee at $8. And they put that into place. They finalized that just a couple weeks ago.
And that is something they can unilaterally do. I mean, this is...
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. In 2009, they passed a law called the CARD Act, which Congress prevented unreasonable fees from being introduced. And the way the Federal Reserve got around this is they said, yes, unreasonable fees aren't allowed, but we'll give credit card companies a safe harbor if they want to raise late fees. They literally immunized them from any kind of sanction if they wanted to raise late fees. That authority
good old Greenspan.
pushed. Yeah, thank you. That authority, it was Bernanke, I guess. That authority got pushed over to the CFPB when it was created, and CFPB lifted the safe harbor. So they said, well, now you can't charge more than $8 or we'll go after you.
So wait, let's hang on, time out. Let's go back to the corporation stuff, because there was other announcements in there in the State of the Union. He said he wants to raise the tax rate on corporations to 21%. Put that in a sort of historical context. Isn't that kind of still low? Wasn't it like 25% back in?
It was 35. I mean, this is more of a legislative hope, let's say, but it's actually really, really important. And here's why. So we remember the Trump tax cuts, 2017, said they would cost $1.5 trillion. When they went back and looked at it, it was closer to $2 trillion. Most of it went to the largest corporations in America and also very wealthy people.
It didn't trickle down? It didn't trickle?
In fact, it did not, believe it or not. In 2025, the end of 2025, all of the individual tax changes in the Trump tax cuts expire.
Right.
All the tax cuts for the wealthy, all of that stuff expires. The next election will determine what we're going to do at that point.
Gross.
If Trump gets in, those tax cuts are probably going to be extended at a cost of, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the cost would be $5 trillion if you just extended every one of the tax cuts in. They do this clever thing with the Trump tax cuts where they cut them off early so they didn't look like they cost that very much. It was also because of the way they had to produce it for using majority vote, the way they had to pass it through reconciliation. It has to not cost past the budget window of 10 years. So they cut it off early to make it look cheaper, right? But if you extended it in perpetuity, it'd be $5 trillion.
David, can I, if you don't mind, can I ask, isn't this like, if you were to de-wonk this and put it in layman's terms for the average public, wouldn't this be like a winning talking point for the Biden administration?
100%.
Like a huge contrast to Trump?
This is the contrast of the election in fiscal terms.
Yeah.
There are obviously a lot of things that are contrasts in the election, but in fiscal terms, one side wants to give giant tax breaks to corporations and the wealthy that cost $5 trillion. And the other side wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. There's a billionaire tax that he announced in.
Yes, 25%.
Right. That would be a minimum tax, so that right now the effective tax rate of billionaires is 8%. He would make it a minimum. You would have to pay 25% of your.
I mean, it will all go to the military, but like, yay!
Right. So what Biden is saying is, he would increase taxes on the wealthy, and we'd increase them to an extent on corporations, and that 21% is also a minimum tax right now. As part of the Inflation Reduction Act, all corporations have to pay at least 15% on their earnings. And it's their book earnings, not what they say to the IRS they get, but what they say to investors that they've made. Because companies, when they talk to investors, they're like, we're doing awesome. We made $20 billion last year. And then they go to the IRS and say, we didn't do anything. We sucked. Yeah. We lost a ton of money. And
Janet's like, oh. Fine.
Yeah, it's a corporate tax on the book profits. And what Biden wants to do is he wants to raise that minimum from 15 to 21. So the real tax rate would still be, I think it's 28% or 25%.
But at least 21.
But the minimum would be 21. So even with deductions.
Keep going with the Inflation Reduction Act. Where are we at on this one? Does the Climate Corps come under that? and do
Actually,
all
it was separate. The Climate Corps was initially in the IRA, and then it was taken out. Thank you, Joe Manchin.
That's right.
But the administration figured out a way to do it on their own, basically through AmeriCorps, which is an existing entity that was put in place during the Clinton administration. So I believe they're accepting the first applications for the first round of Climate Corps individuals. And I think they want to get up to 10,000 people. These will be mostly young people who go into service with this Climate Corps and are doing projects that
like locking down oil pipelines and
I mean they'll be sort of contractors, I guess, not necessarily employees, but they will have this stipend and they will be able to engage in this work for a period of time.
I mean, I bring that up because it's like an irony of this.
I mean, it's, 10,000 people is not a big program, but
no, it's not. But it is an ironic because like we're at a time when we're producing more fossil fuels than ever before, right? And yet we have this Climate Corps, and Biden's like, we just have to do a little bit more extraction, and then we'll go to renewables later.
There aren't 10,000 people in the oil and gas industry, right? And it's a much higher number. So,
Indeed.
There's an imbalance there. But as far as the IRA is concerned, so, two things we should probably talk about. The first are the climate measures. And then later on, we can talk about the healthcare and particularly prescription drug measures.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the climate measures, the Inflation Reduction Act gave a host of grants, I think $369 billion. That's what it was assumed to be. That was the estimated cost. Turns out it's going to be much, much more expensive than that. And that's actually a good thing, because what it means is these credits, which go towards energy efficiency, which go towards renewable energy production, which go towards rebates for electric vehicles, which go towards charging stations, which go towards a whole host of things across and all attempts at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Turns out they're very, very popular. And Goldman Sachs, about a year after the IRA passed, put out an estimate and said, we're actually going to give 4 times as many tax credits as we thought we were. Where we've seen this so far is in a boom in manufacturing construction costs. So first you have to build the factory, right? If you're making whether it's a factory to produce minerals for the clean energy transition for electric vehicles or for batteries,
right.
Or whether you're building electric car factories, or whether you're building renewable energy sites, you got to build them first. So you're going to see this first in the construction. And if you look at a graph of manufacturing construction, it's a straight line upward, and it happens right at the August 2022 when the Inflation Reduction Act comes into force. So that's a good thing. We don't know that those jobs are going to be good jobs that are created.
I mean, he had Sean Fain. He rolled out Sean Fain, head of the UAW. So arguably they would be union jobs.
Potentially, but it's nowhere in the law does it say they have to be, right?
Right.
And there are ways that the administration is trying to nudge that forward. There's
inshallah, it's the inshallah policy.
One good case study was in I believe it was in Alabama. There's an electric bus factory, Bluebird, and they got a grant from the EPA to do electric buses. And in that grant, it said you have to be neutral if there's a union activity, an attempt at union bargaining at a plant. And there was an existing union organizing campaign going on there. And so the company had to remain neutral in that campaign, and the campaign won. We actually wrote about that. It was in Georgia, not Alabama. It was in Macon, Georgia. And we wrote about that at the Prospect as part of our Building Back America series, which you can look at if you go to prospect.org. So those are good examples. And then we have other examples, like, a good one that we've written about is it's part of the CHIPS Act. It's a different bill, but it's the semiconductor factory they're making in Phoenix. And it's a company called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, making this huge campus in Phoenix.
Wait, it's from Taiwan? I thought this was all about American stuff with
Well,
no
it's an American
Asian
factory.
sounds on it.
Well, in fact, TSMC is one of the largest, if not the largest, semiconductor manufacturer in the country, and has a monopoly on a lot of these high-end chips. So if you're going to deal with a company trying to bring them, shore them onto the United States, you're going to have to go through them. So,
yeah.
But unfortunately, TSMC isn't sort of down with letting American workers do this. So they tried to import a bunch of Taiwanese workers. They were bringing, we went to the factory and there were all kinds of license plates from Mexico there. They're bringing in foreign workers from everywhere. A lot of these workers can't talk to each other. It's led to delays at the plant.
Sure.
Fire that we found at the plant that was because of this miscommunication.
Oh my God.
There's the good version of this and the bad version of this. And I would say TSMC is maybe part of the bad.
There's a lot we could talk about. I really appreciate you because it is wonky, but it's important. It just like all of these fix-its and changes, again, I would say like nibbling at, late stage rampant capitalism, and trying to rein it in various ways, whether antitrust or whether these initiatives. And yet it still feels like, is this enough to stop the coming fascist, takeover and or like the complete collapse of the economy and class warfare? I mean, like literal.
It's tough, but I mean, the area where I think you could, that I at least see the most hope is in antitrust. So where we've had a number of really positive developments in a really recent period of time, over the last 3-4 months. We saw the Justice Department sue and have what looks to be a fairly successful trial against Google. They could end up with a breakup of that company's dominance over search. There's another Google case over their ad tech, which they control every side of the transaction on, where that case is going to trial in May. We've seen high-profile mergers be broken up, like the JetBlue Spirit merger, which the Justice Department blocked. There was another merger between, speaking of semiconductors, between NVIDIA and a company called ARM. That was blocked. Adobe was trying to merge with somebody. That was blocked. I almost can't name all of them because there are many. There's more recently, a case has been filed against Amazon. There's a case that was filed against a proposed merger between Kroger and Albertsons, which would create the biggest market in the U.S.
Very different.
Kroger has 20 different names, right? So you're talking about
Kroger Sons,
Ralph's. You're talking about
Ralph's.
You're talking about like there's
Safeway.
You think it's like 2 companies, but it's actually like 30 different mergers that would be going on there. Anyway, the Justice Department, Antitrust Division, and the Federal Trade Commission have really created a sea change in how our relationship, the government's relationship to corporate power.
Yeah.
And, presidencies are not monoliths. There are good people and bad people in administrations. There certainly are policies that I violently disagree with that are being undertaken by the Biden administration. But there are also, when you talk about these binary choices in elections, it's also about Lena Khan. It's about Jonathan Cantor at the DOJ Antitrust. It's about Rohit Chopra at the CFPB that's doing really good stuff. It's about the National Labor Relations Board, which is doing some amazing work. So you have to look at this sort of as a whole.
And it's about, it was very funny because Biden in multiple instances in his State of the Union was like, in 20 years and 30 years. And you're like, when you're no longer here, bro, like you're not going to see the fruits of any of this. Right. And I do take issue with the fact he's taking credit for lowering prescription drug prices, even though it hasn't actually kicked in yet.
That's what I wish. What I wish is that the administration and more specifically the Congress, when they put together these laws, they don't build in these timelines, and these timelines are there for a reason. They're there so that the industry that's being regulated has a chance to stop them, right?
Right, and all the lawsuits have come down actually from the pharmaceutical companies as well.
Correct. So what we're specifically talking about is for the very first time in the Inflation Reduction Act, the government can negotiate prices of select prescription drugs in Medicare. First of all, that's only in Medicare, right? So that's not anyone under the age of 65. That's number one. Number two is that this negotiation will happen over a period of years, and seniors won't actually see the benefits of those lower prices until 2026. So, it's a little hard to say, I, for the first time, negotiated prescription drug prices in Medicare if literally no one sees the benefits of that. Totally. Now, there were other things that already have kicked in, $35 cap on insulin in Medicare, which has been mirrored by some caps outside of Medicare, which is largely because of the American Rescue Plan, and that's way too wonky for us to talk about now. But there was a little thing in the American Rescue Plan that made it so that insulin manufacturers were incentivized to lower their prices.
Yeah, I remember that. It is very much this dance of, if we can incentivize the evil profiteers, if we can incentivize the greed, maybe it'll work out in our favor. And it has. I mean, I think you've pointed to some really important pieces. And yeah, it is not a small thing to get rid of junk fees that are truly slowly gouging people in industries, and everyone's just sort of shaking their heads like, who the fuck's gonna stop this? Dark Brandon, y'all. Dark Brandon.
But Francesca, you know what? Like, listen to David. If you really, I'm critical of Biden, but if you look at his policies and what he's done with the American Rescue Plan, if you do with the Inflation Reduction Act, the promise to raise taxes on the billionaires, make them pay their fair share of taxes, there are a lot of wins. I think the failure is that they still haven't been able to communicate these wins in an effective way to the voters. And I think the best way to do it is do the compare and contrast. This guy raising taxes, I will like lower taxes. This guy, doing tax cuts for the rich, I am not for that. This guy wants to eliminate Social Security and Medicare. I just feel like if they do that type of very simplistic messaging, and bank on the wins, then people will know, because otherwise people have no idea. Like, no one's gonna sit for 25 minutes and listen to David break it down intelligently. I wish they did, but they don't.
And then that's why you are going to listen to the situation.
What are you talking about?
Room right now. And,
this show is massive. Excuse me.
I'm talking about the Rust Belt. I'm talking about the diners in the Rust Belt.
We're really big in the Rust.
You're huge in Dayton.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.